My mom threw a gala for my stepsister and announced she was her only daughter. I smiled and asked her a loud question that made everyone gasp. My mom hosted a gala for my stepsister and proudly declared her as her only daughter. I couldn't help but smile before I blurted out a question that made everyone gasp. $300,000? I said, my voice trembling. That was the exact amount that had disappeared from the Research Foundation's accounts over the past year. I rubbed my tired eyes as I double-checked the spreadsheet I'd been poring over for the last 6 hours. Every red flag pointed straight back to my own mother. My name is Reagan and I've always been the responsible one, the quiet one who followed the rules, while my stepsister Annabelle shone at charity galas and social events. I buried myself in research papers and data analysis. I loved my work, but tonight everything changed. Still here. Jasper's voice startled me as he leaned casually against my office door frame. His coffee mug sent wisps of steam into the dim light. Reagan, whatever you're working on can wait until morning, he said gently. I shook my head, my fingers still trembling as I flipped my laptop around to show him. Look at this. The Foundation's quarterly reports don't match the bank statement. Someone's been siphoning money from the research grants. Jasper set his mug down and peered over my shoulder, his brow creasing. Are you sure about this? The signatures, the approval stamps, they all lead back to the board treasurer. My voice cracked as I whispered. My mother. The very same woman who spent 20 years reminding me I wasn't as naturally gifted as Annabelle. The one who turned every one of my academic achievements into a segue about my stepsister's latest modeling campaign or charity event. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Annabelle read. Mom's going crazy planning next month's gala. You have to come this time, no excuses. Jasper squeezed my shoulder. What are you going to do? I closed my laptop, determination settling in. I'm going to that gala, but not for the reasons they all think. The next morning, I arrived at the Foundation's offices earlier than usual. My mother's assistant, Sarah, was already at her desk, meticulously organizing the day's schedule. Reagan, what brings you to the admin floor? She asked with a genuine smile. Just dropping off some research proposals. I fibbed smoothly. Is your mother in? I hear she's meeting with Trevor, Annabelle's fiancé, about gala sponsorships. Perfect, I murmured before slipping into my mother's empty office. My heart pounded as I connected my USB drive to her computer. I'd set up encryption software to give me remote access to her files. Later that afternoon, as Jasper and I combed through the downloaded data, he asked, what exactly are you looking for? I pointed at a series of emails and transaction records. Proof. Anything that shows this money was misused. I stopped when a new email popped up. Look at this correspondence with Trevor's investment firm. They're using the gala as a front to launder money through bogus charitable donations. Jasper whistled low. Your mother and her future brother-in-law make quite the team, while Annabelle parades as the perfect socialite, completely unaware that she's just a cover. My voice grew bitter. I've spent my life being the good daughter, the quiet one, but they've crossed a line. This money was meant for medical research, to help people. My phone rang then. It was my mother. I answered in a measured tone. Darling, I need you at the dress fitting tomorrow. Annabelle's chosen the most stunning gown for the gala, and we must find you something appropriate. I could hear the thinly veiled criticism. Appropriate meaning safe, understated, forgettable. Nothing that might outshine her golden child. Of course, mother. I wouldn't miss it, I replied. After hanging up, I turned to Jasper. I've been the responsible one all my life, but now they've gone too far. I pulled up the gala guest list on my screen. Board members, donors, the perfect crowd. Don't you remember what Mom always said? Presentation is everything. Jasper's eyes widened as he realized my implication. Reagan, this could destroy your family, he cautioned. I thought of the patients waiting for research grants that never arrived, of brilliant scientists whose projects were shelved because the funding mysteriously dried up. I remembered years of feeling small, watching my mother's casual corruption hide behind Annabelle's flawless smile. No, I said, my voice stronger than ever. This will free my family. They just don't know it yet. I began gathering all the evidence into a comprehensive presentation. My hands were steady for the first time in days. The gala was only 3 weeks away. Just enough time to ensure every detail was perfect. Mother always said I had a talent for detailed analysis, I murmured. Time to show her just how right I am. Jasper scanned a printout spread across my desk. These donation records don't make any sense. Look, $500,000 from a company that doesn't even exist. I leaned in, scanning the documents. All these shell companies, they all point back to Trevor's investment firm. He added quietly, your mother was clever, but she got greedy. I nodded, then another spreadsheet popped up on the screen. Just then, a knock at my office door made us both jump. Annabelle stood there, as perfectly put together as always in her designer outfit. Surprise, I brought lunch, she said, holding a paper bag from my favorite deli. I scrambled to close my laptop, and Jasper quickly shuffled the papers into a folder. Are you two doing some sort of teenage makeout session behind the bleachers? Annabelle teased, her tone light. What brings you here? Can't a sister bring lunch without an ulterior motive? I forced a smile. Just boring research stuff. She perched on the edge of my desk, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the wood. Mother's driving me crazy with all this gala planning though. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a prop in their perfect little world. For a moment, I saw something familiar behind her flawless makeup and practiced smile. The same trapped feeling I'd been fighting for years. Annabelle, I started. But then my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Your mother's looking for the foundation's audit reports. Says you have them. I should go, I murmured. Annabelle stood abruptly. Photo shoot for the gala invitations. Mother insists on capturing the perfect family moment. She rolled her eyes as she left. I immediately called Jasper. We need to move faster. Mother's looking for the audit reports, get on it. Meet me at the coffee house in 20 minutes. At the bustling cafe, Jasper slid a USB drive across the table. I traced the shell companies, they all link back to Trevor's investment firm. And here's the kicker. The money's being funneled through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I sipped my Americano, absorbing the news. But why is Mother's salary so generous? Jasper lowered his voice. I also found emails between your mom and Trevor about something called Project Legacy. They plan to announce it at the gala. My phone lit up with a text from my mother. Darling, don't forget dress fitting tomorrow at 10. And please do something with your hair this time. I ignored it. Project Legacy? From what I can piece together, they're restructuring the foundation. They'll only fund approved projects, ones that channel money right back to them. The realization hit me hard. They weren't just embezzling funds, they were setting up a permanent pipeline, using Annabelle's public image as the perfect cover. Jasper added, they're going to use Annabelle to announce their vision for the foundation. She's the ideal front for their scheme. I thought about Annabelle's earlier admission, about feeling like nothing more than a prop. She had no idea what was really going on. Back at the office, I opened the gala preparations folder on my laptop. My mother had meticulously scripted every detail. The speeches, the photo ops, even the exact moment Annabelle would announce Project Legacy. We can't let this happen, I said to Jasper over the phone. They're not just stealing money. They're trying to legitimize their corruption. I stared at the gala invitation on my desk, a glossy photo of Annabelle's perfect smile. We need to talk to Sarah. She handles all the foundation's correspondence. She must have seen something risky. Your mother's right hand for sure, Jasper agreed. I picked up the invitation and thought of Sarah's soft spot for me, and her unwavering belief in what the foundation was meant to stand for. Be careful, Reagan, Sarah had whispered once. The closer we get to the gala, the more dangerous this becomes. I recalled all the researchers relying on these grants, the lives that depended on that money. Some risks are worth taking. Later, Sarah's hands trembled as she handed me a stack of documents. I always suspected something was off. These meeting minutes, they've been doctored. The real versions are completely different from what Mom's been presenting. A door slammed somewhere down the hall and Sarah jumped, snatching the papers back. Go now, she urged in a hushed tone. I slipped out just as Trevor's voice echoed through the corridor. Paula, we need to discuss the announcement. I ducked into the stairwell, pressing myself against the wall as their voices faded away. Everything's arranged, I heard my mother say. Once Project Legacy is announced, the board will have no choice. The press will be there, the major donors and Annabelle. She'll do exactly as told. Trevor replied with a smirk. They won't know what hit them. My stomach churned. They were going to use Annabelle as an unwitting accomplice in their corrupt scheme. Back at the lab, I connected my phone to Jasper's computer. Look at these meeting minutes, he said, scrolling through photos of documents. Mother's been systematically misleading the board about where the money is going. I took a deep breath. This is huge. Then the lab door burst open. Annabelle stood there, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I need to talk to you, she blurted. Jasper and I exchanged panicked looks. How much did you hear? I asked softly. With a trembling voice, she admitted. Trevor's been cheating on me. And he's been meeting with Mom almost every day, planning something big. Something about the foundation. I met Jasper's gaze and he nodded slightly. Annabelle, I said cautiously. What do you really know about Project Legacy? Her perfectly plucked eyebrows furrowed. Mother says I'm announcing a new charitable initiative. A restructuring to make the foundation more efficient. But why? Because it's all a lie. Before I could stop her, the words tumbled out. The whole thing is a front for embezzlement. Mom and Trevor have been stealing from research grants. I stood there stunned. A lifetime of secrets unraveling in a single moment. Something inside me finally broke after 5 long years of trying to be the perfect stepmom. Walking on eggshells and always justifying everyone else's behavior. I couldn't hold it back any longer. I told Lisa, this is my restaurant. I organized your entire gala, and I even bought you that dress you loved so much. I did everything possible to make it perfect, but your mother, she showed up drunk, caused a scene and wrecked property. She didn't even bring you a present. All she delivered was chaos and embarrassment. Lisa's face shifted instantly, from anger to pure fury. Oh my God, here we go, she shouted, throwing her hands up. It's always about the money with you, isn't it? I mean, you paid for this, you bought that. Do you really think that because you have money you can control everyone and everything? Then, turning toward her classmates who stood uncomfortably in our living room hoping to disappear, she added, my real mom will be here soon, with a bitter laugh. It'll be nice to finally have someone normal around instead of, she snapped, gesturing at me as if I were something filthy scraped off the bottom of her shoe. Your mother is not welcome in this house. I tried to keep my voice steady as I responded. This is my restaurant. All the while struggling to hold my son steady against the rising tide of anger and hurt. But then, recalling what had happened earlier at the restaurant, Lisa completely lost control. Her face turned red as she screamed, You're not my mother. You're nothing to me, just an empty space. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? Keep your filthy nose out of my business. You're just some woman my dad married for his money. The room fell silent. I could see Lisa's friends shifting uncomfortably, some staring at their phones, others suddenly fascinated by the ceiling. With venom dripping from her words, Lisa then told them, "Let's get out of here. I don't want to celebrate in her house," emphasizing her as if it were something disgusting. They all hurried out without a word. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled, and I was left standing in an empty living room, surrounded by half-eaten food and scattered plates, feeling as if I'd been hit by a truck. I hoped that finally James would stand up for me. Instead, he cleared his throat in a cold, hard tone. "You had no right to flaunt our house and money like that. You didn't need to remind her that this is your domain, and that your money paid for everything." I stared at him, feeling like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. "Are you serious? Where were you when your ex was throwing plates around my restaurant? And where were you just now when your daughter was hurling insults at me in front of her entire graduating class? You're supposed to be the adult here." I snapped. "You should know better than to argue with a teenager, and then hide your head like a coward," he retorted. "That's exactly what you do. You sit there silently while your ex and your daughter treat me like garbage." I shot back, "Well, guess what? I'm done being everyone's punching bag." James's face darkened further, and without another word, he stormed upstairs. I even heard the guest room door slam shortly after. The next morning, breakfast felt like dining in a morgue. James pushed his eggs around his plate without a word. I was about to leave when Lisa stumbled in, still wearing her graduation party outfit, the smell of alcohol preceding her. I looked to James, waiting for him to comment anything about our daughter coming home drunk at 9 a.m. But he continued studying his eggs in silence. "Where have you been all night?" I asked in a neutral tone. "None of your business," she snapped back, her bloodshot eyes full of contempt. "You're not my mother. You're just an empty space taking up room in this house." Then she turned and staggered upstairs. James stayed silent, and I started to think his silence was his superpower. The following week, it felt like I was living with a vindictive ghost. Lisa wouldn't speak directly to me. Instead, she referred to me as if I were an inanimate object. "Dad, can you ask your wife to pass the salt?" she'd say, pointing at me as if I were a piece of furniture. Or she'd announce to James, "This woman is in my way, get out of it." I said nothing, watching it all unfold. After 5 years of trying to be the perfect stepmom, I was done letting them hide behind false smiles and cruel words. Then on Sunday during another quiet dinner, Lisa burst into the dining room, waving an envelope like she just won the lottery. "Dad, I got in," she shouted, practically dancing around the table. I watched as she hugged her father, both of them grinning broadly. Then with a smirk she said, "I'll never forget. Tell your wife she needs to pay for my tuition." Something inside me finally snapped. I offered a smile, not a kind one, and said clearly, "I'm not paying for your college education. You've made it abundantly clear that I'm not your mother. I'm nothing more than an empty space. And guess what? This empty space's wallet is closed. Why don't you ask your real mother to cover your tuition?" Lisa's face flushed an alarming shade of red. "You vindictive expletive," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're doing this just to punish me. You're evil." I stood there, strangely calm, as she hurled insult after insult, like watching a storm through a window. I could see the chaos swirling, but it couldn't touch me anymore. "Dad," she cried, turning to James. "Make her pay. She has to pay. Tell her." James cleared his throat in that patronizing tone I'd come to loathe. "Come on, honey, stop joking around. You know you need to pay for Lisa's education." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I've made it perfectly clear. I will not pay tens of thousands in tuition for someone who spent weeks telling me I'm nothing. Someone who treats me like I'm less than dirt in my own home." I then turned and walked out of the dining room, with Lisa's screams trailing behind me up the stairs. I could hear her launching another tantrum. Plates crashing, chairs scraping, theatrical sobs, like mother, like daughter, I thought grimly. Later that day, as the chaos downstairs slowly subsided, my bedroom door burst open. James stormed in, his face flushed with anger. "I'm sick of this," he spat. "I'm tired of you playing these games. You need to grow up and pay for Lisa's education." I looked at him calmly from our bed. "No, you and your ex can figure out how to pay for Berkeley. I'm sure the two of you can work something out." He began pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're being completely selfish. She's just a teenager, for God's sake. You're the adult here, you need to be the bigger person." I watched him pace, remembering all those times he'd used the same excuse. "Be the bigger person, let it go. She's just a kid, one who's made it abundantly clear how she feels about me. Why should I invest in her future when she's shown nothing but contempt?" I said quietly. James stopped pacing and fixed me with a hard stare. "Fine. Let me make this simple. Either you pay for Lisa's education or I'm filing for divorce." He clearly expected me to break down, cry, or beg him to stay, but I just shrugged. "Okay, get a divorce." His mouth moved in disbelief, but no words came out. He hadn't expected me to call his bluff. "I'll call my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. In the meantime, you and Lisa should start looking for a new place to live." He stood there, staring at me as if he'd never seen me before. Finally, without another word, he turned and left the room, the door closing quietly behind him. The next morning, I walked downstairs to find James and Lisa seated at the dining table as if staging an ambush. Lisa's eyes were red-rimmed, and James wore that practiced, concerned father look. "Honey, James," he said, flashing that manipulative smile I'd come to hate. We've had time to calm down and think. Lisa nodded eagerly, like a well-trained puppet. We all overreacted yesterday, she added sweetly. I stood in the doorway, a strange clarity washing over me, as if I were truly seeing them for the first time. The thing is, James continued in that measured tone he used when he wanted something, we're family. Families fight, but they also make up. And since you escalated this college situation, it would mean a lot if you took the first step toward reconciliation. Lisa jumped in. Yeah, and if you help with tuition, it'll show you're really sorry and want to make things right. I almost laughed. They really thought a bit of fake remorse and rehearsed family platitudes would work on me. I pulled out my phone and said, I just got off the phone with my lawyer. 5 minutes ago, the divorce papers should be ready this afternoon. Instantly, Lisa's sweet smile vanished into shock, and James's face turned that familiar angry red. I looked straight at Lisa and said, Congratulations. You won't have to deal with your non-mom interfering in your life anymore. Isn't that what you wanted? Lisa burst into genuine tears, none of the calculated ones from before. I was done being manipulated by teenage sobs. James stood up so quickly his chair toppled over, and without a word, he stormed upstairs. I could hear him yanking drawers, slamming closet doors, the sound of suitcases being packed and doors slamming shut. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. That night, messages started flooding in. First, James wrote, We said things we regret. Let's talk like adults. Then Lisa texted, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you're being really unfair about college. When I didn't reply, the messages turned nastier. You're destroying this family with your stubbornness. I hope you're happy being alone with your money. You'll regret this when you're old and have nobody. The divorce was swift, thanks to the prenup I'd insisted on. James tried to contest it, but my lawyer shut him down quickly. He got nothing. Not a penny of my restaurant's profits, not a dime of my savings. I hear bits about them now through mutual friends. They're living in a small apartment across town. Lisa couldn't afford Berkeley and is working at a mall somewhere, and James is trying to revive his contracting business, though it's not going well. I've redecorated the house since they left, tossing out every piece of furniture that reminded me of them. The place feels bigger now, lighter somehow, or maybe it's just me, finally free of the burden of trying to buy love from people who were only ever interested in selling it. I gripped the USB drive hidden in my clutch, the memory of last night's frantic operation still fresh. Sarah had come through, those files were devastating. Mother never suspected we'd managed to access them just hours before she was about to purge her system. With only 5 minutes left until the announcement, Trevor's voice rang out. Everyone please take your seats. At my elbow, Annabelle appeared, looking stunning in emerald green. Sarah was already in position, broadcasting everything live to the Foundation's main servers. She squeezed my hand. Once this starts, there's no stopping it, she whispered. On stage, Mother practically glowed. Thank you all for joining us on such short notice. Tonight marks a new chapter in our Foundation's history, she began. I slipped toward the AV booth as her words filled the room, my heart pounding. Jasper was there, feigning adjustments on the sound system. Cameras are live, he murmured. Every board member received an anonymous email link. They're all watching the stream on their phones, and even if the power's cut, everything's recorded to external servers. Then Mother's voice shifted as she continued. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce my daughter Annabelle, who will share our vision for Project Legacy. The applause was deafening as Annabelle took the stage. She looked perfectly poised, just as Mother had trained her, but I noticed her hands trembling on the podium. Thank you, Mother, Annabelle began, her voice clear and strong. Before I begin, I want to share something personal. All my life, I've been the face of this foundation, the perfect daughter, the charitable socialite, the cover story. But tonight, I choose to be honest. At that moment, Trevor began moving toward the stage. I nodded to Jasper, who pressed a button. The screens behind Annabelle suddenly lit up with financial records, email chains, and details of offshore accounts. Project Legacy isn't about charity, Annabelle declared as gasps rippled through the crowd. It's about greed and corruption, stealing from the sick and desperate to line private pockets. Mother's voice cracked like a whip. Security, she barked. I leaped onto the stage beside my sister. The evidence has already been sent to the FBI, and the press is live. Sarah is broadcasting this to every major news outlet. The room erupted into chaos. Board members scrambled to their feet. Phones flashed as recordings started, and even the backup system was in play. Mother's speech faltered as I saw the numbers on the big screen. $300,000 from the Cancer Research Fund, $500,000 from Pediatric Studies, all funneled through Trevor's investment firm into private accounts. Mother's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're doing, she snarled. The people we answer to will investigate every one of you. I continued, listing every shell company, every fake grant, every donor who had unknowingly helped funnel money from sick children. Trevor finally reached the stage. Paula, we need to leave now, he announced. But Mother wasn't finished. Grabbing the microphone, she cried. Everything I did was for this foundation, for our family's legacy. No. Annabelle's voice cut through the chaos. It was never for the foundation. It was for you. Using me as your perfect distraction while you robbed those who need help. As security guards swarmed the doors, Mother lunged for the podium one last time. But before she could continue, Officer Paula Horton stepped forward. We need you to come with us, she ordered. The look Mother gave me as they escorted her and Trevor away could have melted steel. You gave us everything, she spat. Is this how you repay me? I met her gaze, my voice firm. Consider this our final exam. Soon, board members clustered around us, phones recording every word, questions flying in every direction. Amid the uproar, Annabelle gripped my hand tightly. A reporter demanded, "Miss Horton, what happens to the foundation now?" I looked at Annabelle. She nodded, and with conviction she said, "We start over, transparently, honestly, exactly as it should have been." A voice from the crowd shouted, "So Project Legacy will be exactly what it claims to be?" Annabelle smiled, steady and clear. "A fresh start. A true legacy of helping others, not ourselves." In the midst of the chaos, Jasper appeared by my side. "We did it," he said quietly as we watched Mother's perfect world crumble. Standing amid the wreckage of our mother's empire, I felt lighter than I had in years. Later that night at the police station, the buzz was constant. In a crowded room, Mother sat across from us, her designer outfit rumpled, makeup smeared from hours in holding, yet her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You've made your point," she said coldly. "Now drop the charges." Annabelle laughed a harsh, bitter laugh. "Drop the charges? The FBI has already frozen the foundation's accounts, and Trevor is trying to save himself with a plea deal. It's over, Mother." Mother leaned forward. "Do you have any idea how many lives you've ruined? The donors, they're cooperating with the investigation now." I interrupted. "Nobody wants to be connected to a charity fraud scandal." The detective placed a thick file on the table. "Mrs. Horton, we found additional accounts in the Cayman Islands. Care to explain?" Mother's lawyer touched her arm as she asserted her right to remain silent. A first, as Annabelle muttered. We watched her. Outside the station, reporters swarmed. A detective addressed me. "Miss Horton, we'll need your statement about when you first discovered these discrepancies." For the next 2 hours, I recounted every detail. The missing research funds, the shell companies, the fake grants. Annabelle added her testimony about Trevor's involvement and the planned announcement. "Given the amount of money involved, we're talking federal charges," the detective finally said. Jasper met me outside the interview room as the board called an emergency meeting. Annabelle checked her phone. "It's almost midnight. Damage control doesn't sleep," she said. At the foundation's eerily quiet offices, Sarah greeted us at the boardroom door, her eyes red from crying. "They've been in there for hours," she whispered. Inside, the board members looked shell-shocked. The elderly chairman, who'd known our father, shuffled papers. "Ladies, please sit down. We've spent the evening assessing this crisis. The foundation's reputation might still be salvageable." I interrupted. "If we act fast and with complete transparency, we can rebuild trust." One board member added, "Our donors are fleeing." Annabelle straightened and spoke up. "Let me talk. I've been the face of this foundation for years, but now I'll tell the truth. We discovered corruption and chose to expose it ourselves." I pulled out my laptop and presented a complete restructuring plan. New oversight measures, transparent accounting, direct links between donors and the research they fund. The board exchanged glances. "We need new leadership," the chairman said slowly. "Someone who understands both the scientific and public sides of our mission." Under the table, I felt Annabelle squeeze my hand. Then the chairman offered, "We'd like to offer you both positions. Reagan as Executive Director of Research and Annabelle as Director of Public and Donor Relations. Together," Annabelle finished, "together our actions, shocking though they were, demonstrate the integrity this foundation desperately needs." Hours later, as we stepped out into the early morning light, the media swarmed. Reporters shouted, "Miss Horton, how does it feel to expose your own mother's corruption? And what's next for the foundation?" Annabelle stepped forward, every inch the polished spokesperson. "The foundation is entering a new era of transparency and genuine charitable work," she declared. A voice from the crowd called out, "And Project Legacy?" She replied firmly, "A fresh start. A true legacy of helping others, not ourselves." As the chaos continued, Jasper pulled up in his car, offering us an escape from the media frenzy. While we drove away, Annabelle finally broke down. "I loved him," she whispered. "I thought I did. How did we not see who they really were?" I replied softly, "Just like everyone else. Today we begin fixing everything they broke." I thought of Mother sitting in her cell, still clinging to her twisted version of perfection. "We're not fixing their foundation," I said. "We're building our own, the right way this time." As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of promise, I realized that from the ruins of our mother's empire, something honest could finally grow. Later in court, Mother stood tall in her designer suit, handcuffed, a stark contrast to her former glory. She didn't look at us as she was led away. Trevor had already taken a plea deal, trading information for a lighter sentence, while Mother stubbornly fought until the end. Outside, reporters camped around us. I addressed the microphones firmly. "No one is above accountability, not even family." A reporter asked, "Miss Horton, what do you say to your mother's crimes?" Annabelle stepped forward. "Every dollar stolen from sick children will be repaid threefold. That's our promise." Back at the foundation, Sarah had arranged a staff meeting. The boardroom was packed with researchers, administrators, and grant coordinators. I announced, "The trial is over. Now we focus on what matters, the work. Dr. Reynolds' cancer study needs funding." One attendee asked, "Is it approved?" Annabelle checked her tablet. "Yes," she said. "Every donation is now tracked in real time on our public database. Donors can see exactly where their money goes." After the meeting, Jasper found me in my office. He nodded at the envelope on my desk. Mother's last attempt to communicate before sentencing. "Nothing she says now can change anything," I murmured. Maybe you should hear it anyway. I picked up the letter, Mother's precise handwriting standing out starkly on the page. I gripped the USB drive hidden in my clutch, the memory of last night's frantic operation still fresh. Sarah had come through, the files we accessed were devastating. Mother never suspected we'd managed to crack her system just hours before her purge. With only 5 minutes until the announcement, Trevor's voice echoed through the room. Everyone, please take your seats. At my elbow, Annabelle appeared, stunning in an emerald green dress. Sarah was already in position, live streaming everything to the Foundation's main servers. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Once this starts, there's no turning back." On stage, Mother practically glowed. "Thank you all for joining us on such short notice. Tonight marks a new chapter in our Foundation's history," she began. I slipped toward the AV booth as her speech filled the hall, my heart pounding. Jasper was already there, pretending to adjust the sound. Every board member got an anonymous email link. "They're watching this live on their phones," he murmured. "Even if the power goes out, everything's being recorded externally." Then Mother continued, "Now I'm thrilled to introduce my daughter Annabelle, who will share our vision for Project Legacy." Applause erupted as Annabelle took the stage. She looked perfectly poised, exactly as Mother had trained her, but I noticed her hands trembling on the podium. "Thank you, Mother," Annabelle began. "Before I speak, I want to share something personal. All my life I've been the face of this foundation, the perfect daughter, the charitable socialite, the cover story. But tonight I choose honesty." At that moment, Trevor started moving toward the stage. I nodded to Jasper, who pressed a button. Suddenly, the screens behind Annabelle flashed financial records, email chains, and details of offshore accounts. "Project Legacy isn't about charity," Annabelle declared, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's about greed and corruption, stealing from the sick and desperate to fill private pockets." Gasps rippled through the room. Mother's voice cracked. "Security," she barked. I leaped onto the stage beside my sister. "The evidence has already been sent to the FBI, and the press is live. Sarah is broadcasting this to every major news outlet," I announced. The room erupted into chaos. Board members scrambled to their feet. Phones flashed as recordings began, and even the backup systems were online. Mother's speech faltered. Now the big screen displayed $300,000 diverted from the Cancer Research Fund, $500,000 from pediatric studies, all funneled through Trevor's investment firm into private accounts. "You have no idea what you're doing," Annabelle continued, reading from the screen. "The people we serve will be investigated. Every shell company, every fake grant, every donor who unwittingly helped steal from sick children." Trevor finally reached the stage. "Paula, we need to leave now," he declared. But Mother wasn't finished. Grabbing the microphone, she cried, "Everything I did was for this foundation, for our family's legacy." "No." Annabelle's voice cut through the chaos. "It was never for the foundation, it was for you. You used me as your perfect distraction while you robbed those who needed help." Security guards surged in, and soon Officer Paula Horton stepped forward. "We need you to come with us," she ordered. The look Mother gave me as she was escorted away could have melted steel. I said firmly, "Consider this our final exam." Board members crowded around us, demanding answers as phones recorded every moment. A reporter shouted, "Miss Horton, what happens to the foundation now?" I looked at Annabelle. She nodded, and with conviction she replied, "We start over, transparently and honestly, just as it should have been." A voice from the crowd called out, "So Project Legacy will be exactly what it claims to be?" Annabelle smiled. "A fresh start. A true legacy of helping others, not ourselves." In the midst of the uproar, Jasper came to my side and whispered, "We did it. We really did it." Standing amid the wreckage of Mother's crumbling empire, I felt lighter than I had in years. Later that night, at the police station, Mother sat across from us in a rumpled designer suit. Her makeup was smeared from hours in custody, yet her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You've made your point," she said coldly. "Now drop the charges." Annabelle laughed bitterly. "Drop the charges? The FBI has frozen the foundation's accounts, and Trevor's already taken a plea deal." Mother leaned forward, her voice seething. "Do you have any idea how many lives you've ruined?" I interrupted. "Nobody wants to be linked to a charity fraud scandal." A detective placed a thick file on the table. "Mrs. Horton, we've found additional accounts in the Cayman Islands. Care to explain?" Mother's lawyer touched her arm. "My client exercises her right to remain silent." Annabelle muttered, "That's a first." We watched as Mother was led away. Through the window, reporters camped outside, hungry for updates on the scandal that had rocked the philanthropic community. The detective then addressed me. "Miss Horton, we need your statement on when you first discovered these discrepancies." For the next 2 hours, I recounted every detail: the missing research funds, the shell companies, the fake grants. Annabelle added her testimony about Trevor's involvement and the planned announcement. "Given the amount of money involved, we're looking at federal charges," the detective finally said. Outside the interview room, Jasper met me as the board called an emergency meeting. They wanted us both there immediately. Annabelle checked her phone. "It's almost midnight. Damage control doesn't sleep," she noted. We returned to the foundation's offices, now eerily quiet. Sarah greeted us at the boardroom door, her eyes red from crying. "They've been in there for hours," she whispered. Inside, the board members looked stunned. The elderly chairman, who had known our father, shuffled papers. "Ladies, please sit down. We've spent the evening reviewing the situation." The foundation's reputation might still be salvageable. I interrupted. If we act fast and with complete transparency, we can rebuild trust. One board member added. Our donors are fleeing. Annabelle straightened up and said, let me speak. I've been the face of this foundation for years, but now I'll tell the truth. We discovered corruption and chose to expose it ourselves. I pulled up my laptop and presented a complete restructuring plan. New oversight measures, transparent accounting, direct links between donors and research. The board exchanged looks. We need new leadership, the chairman said slowly. Someone who understands both the scientific and public aspects of our mission. Under the table, I felt Annabelle squeeze my hand. Then the chairman continued, we'd like to offer you both positions. Reagan as Executive Director of Research and Annabelle as Director of Public and Donor Relations. Annabelle finished. Together your actions, shocking as they were, demonstrate the integrity this foundation desperately needs. Hours later, as we stepped out into the early morning light, reporters swarmed us. One shouted, Miss Horton, how does it feel to expose your own mother's corruption? Annabelle stepped forward, every inch the polished spokesperson. The foundation is entering a new era of transparency and genuine charitable work. A reporter called out, and what about Project Legacy? She replied confidently, it means a fresh start. A true legacy of helping others, not ourselves. Jasper emerged with his car, offering us a way out of the media frenzy. As we drove away, Annabelle finally broke down. I loved him, she whispered, tears in her eyes. I thought I did. How did we not see who they really were? I replied softly, just like everyone else. Today we begin to fix what was broken. The city lights sparkled around us, each one representing a life our work might touch. Mother's legacy had been built on lies, but ours would be built on something stronger: truth, trust, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Then, as I sat in the quiet of my office, I pulled out the letter from Mother, her final attempt to justify herself. In her precise handwriting it read, Reagan, you think you've won? Perhaps you have, but everything I did was to secure our position, our influence. You'll understand someday when the weight of legacy bears down on you. Power requires sacrifice. Remember that. Annabelle appeared in the doorway just as I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the shredder. Speaking of which, I said, the university called. They want us to give a guest lecture on ethical leadership. Annabelle laughed. I'm not exactly professor material. No, you're better. You're living proof that people can choose integrity over advantage. Then the intercom buzzed Sarah's voice. The governor's here for the tour. We walked together through the foundation halls, now bright with transparency. Glass walls had replaced solid ones, letting sunlight and scrutiny reach every corner. In the lobby, the governor waited, surrounded by digital displays showing real-time grant allocations and research progress. Very modern, he remarked. Would you like to meet some of our researchers? I offered. Dr. Reynolds is about to test a promising new treatment protocol, he replied after a pause. Though I had hoped to discuss the foundation's political connections, I added, your mother had certain arrangements, but those died with the old regime. Annabelle smoothly interjected, we'd love to show you how your state's medical research grants are advancing critical studies. I hid my smile. Mother had taught us well about handling powerful people, just not in the way she had planned. Later in the lab, Jasper showed us the latest results from the pediatric trials. This could change everything, he said, pointing at the data. With the new funding, we might see a breakthrough within months. Mother would have buried this, I realized. It never fit her profit model. Mother isn't here, Annabelle said firmly. We are, and we're doing it right. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. A reporter from the Times wanted an interview about Mother's old network starting a new foundation across the state. I showed the message to Annabelle. Ready for another battle? She grinned. Always. But first, dinner. I'm starving. As we left the building, I caught our reflection in the glass doors. Two sisters, no longer in anyone's shadow, with the new foundation's logo shining above us. Truth heals, Annabelle said. You know what? Mother never understood. Real power isn't about control. It's about choice. And we choose to help people. I added. Each city light out there represents someone whose life our work might touch. Annabelle smiled. Mother's legacy was built on lies, but ours will be built on something stronger: truth, trust, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Jasper called from behind. About that Times reporter. I exchanged a look with Annabelle and we both smiled. Another battle, another day, I said. But this time we're fighting for something real. And that makes all the difference.